Hi,
Welcome,
everybody.
everybody. There's still more people coming, but for now, I'd like to introduce Jurgen Weiland, who is going to speak about infants, and his lecture is going to focus on the relationship of mother and child. And I know Jurgen from quite a while back, maybe a decade or more ago, when we were mutual friends with Anne Schade in Munich, who's a long-time homeopath. And Jurgen has been in Boulder when we still held classes and did a really beautiful seminar with Anne Schade on children and childbirth. Jurgen is working in a clinic with midwives, and so this is like his daily topic. That's what he's working with every day. And Jurgen, can I hand this over to you?
Sure. Yeah. Okay, so hello everybody. Good morning, America, and maybe good afternoon to somewhere else. I don't know where you join from. It's lovely to see so many faces also, because usually when we do a webinar, it's like I'm speaking against my wall and computer and alone, so this is much more comfortable. And technically, I think it's good to be muted for sure. You can leave your video on, that's fine. I will try to bring myself more on the top here to fix. Yeah, okay. No, that's when I fix it, then, oh no, yeah, that looks all right. Good. And yeah, thanks for introducing me, Barbara. And so I would say I will just start, and then we see what comes up, what kind of questions and you have. And so, yeah, let's go. You can also use the chat for sure if you have any thing you don't want to forget, because I mean I will probably speak about an hour 15 minutes, and then we have also 15 minutes for questions and answers, but maybe something pops up and you want to write it down, and we can later look at that in the chat. Okay, so then I will start sharing my screen. And then we go from here. Okay, so yeah, according to my work, I mean, I'm practicing now 30 years, unbelievable how long. And since the birth of my oldest son, who's now 24, I'm working together with midwives here in this studio office, which is like, here's my consulting room, and then we have also rooms where the midwives, they do birth preparation, and we have babies, and we have all sorts of getting in touch or baby massage with all topics around giving birth and early childhood and things like that. So that's what I like to share with you, my experience, and also what to address, what can be important. I mean, we have just a good hour, so what can we share in 1 hour is, or 1.5. It's mainly for me, my intention, and that's what I also have selected cases from, is how do we get influenced and what do we have to address when we treat newborn babies, and also what kind of topics maybe come up very often. So let me go step by step through that and start very early and see how far we get. Because my own practice started with learning remedies singly, not really interlinked between a specific system. And this is something I find so valuable in homeopathy nowadays, that we have remedy systems. Like we can say we have families, we have also group of remedies, which we can say, or we could call the polycrest of early childhood. And which remedies those are, we will share now in a minute. So besides practicing homeopathy, I'm also passionate in doing photography, and those images here you see are all taken by me with these small little wonderful children. And let's talk about the mother-child unit. And for this, I found a lovely quote by Ashley Montagu. And he said, in the time between conception and delivery, 9 months later, the human being is more receptive to his environment than he will ever be again in his life. So, and this expression by Montagu is also what we could term in different words like everything around the primary period. This is a term, primary period, which has been coming out by Michel Audin. Michel Audin was working together with Frédéric Le Boyer, who they did a lot of work for the midwives, for the women, also how to ease birth, how the water birth, all that, introducing little pools into the hospitals, and he has collected a database also for influences, disturbances which come up during pregnancy, maybe even during conception, in the time father and mother are joining together, the pregnancy, giving birth, and also the first year of life. This is everything around the primary period. And let's see, and this is what I selected for today, cases where something specific happened either during pregnancy or giving birth or during early childhood. Because what we termed in history, or which you can still find in literature for children in pediatrics, are books about the constitution of a child. How does it look like? What is the color of the eyes? Does it sweat, or is it warm? Is it cold? All these things, of course, they're still important. But for me, and this is also what I did years ago in my master's thesis, is what are the dynamic influences to a child, and how does it express it, and what can we observe? Because these dynamic influences is all what counts for me in homeopathy, is like to see what the life force has been influenced by and how the life force is expressing it, because this is all we can do. We can, especially in children, of course, we can observe how the child looks, but we have to also see everything around it with all our senses. Okay, so the structure, or when we approach this topic, is, of course, we have general information here for you, how to treat children. We have proven indications where I show some case studies, case samples, but we also have a specific materia medica and a certain collection of books. And Barbara, I'm happy to share this as a PDF that you can give it to the audience. So when we treat a child or new life, we have to ask when, how, what, why, of course. What is there to consider? And especially, what is the connection to the mother? Is it an acute or chronic issue? And is there a miasm involved, or constitution? What are the peculiarities? And also, which methodology do we use? Because, I mean, this today is, I would say, there are keynotes, but there's also this, me personally, I like the sensation method, follow it since many decades. And also the systematic approach in materia medica, which we now have. We have such a broad picture and a broad system, but also we don't have to name it a specific method here when we treat children. It's more about the right approach and connecting what the link is between mother and child. So, and of course, the aphorism 3 in the organon, which I will not read here totally, but just keep in mind or feel reminded to the knowledge of the disease. What is the indication? The main indication has to fit to the medical power of our remedies. So we have a remedy and its medical power, or where it works curative, and we have a knowledge of disease. And of course, we have to discover what is undoubtedly morbid. And then when we do it perfect, we also have the exact mode of preparation, means the right dose, the proper dose. And if possible, we also try to restore, or we have to remove the obstacles to cure. So this is all written in aphorism 3, which we don't take too much time for that. Just a word as an introduction to literature. What kind of books are available? What is maybe something nice to work with? I mean, me personally, I'm using, since many years, I did use Mac repertory and reference works. And nowadays we use Synergy homeopathic software, which is like the inheritance of what David Walkerton brought to life, but it, for some reason, it couldn't carry on to the future. So now we have a different software, which we will also have a look at in a minute. But some old and for me still influential books when you look about children is Guernsey's Obstetrics and Young Children, which is published and also inside Synergy homeopathic software. So this is a kind of old book or classical book where you have lots of clinical experience. And Guernsey is a name, Knell is a name, which we will see on the next page. But they all worked together also with Herring, Constantine Herring, and they collected a lot of clinical experience about this topic. Then we also have new publications like from Paul Herskew, the homeopathic treatment of children, pediatric constitutional types from the US. Then we have Linda Johnston, also from the US, which has also written a beautiful work about how to treat children with the sensation method. That's 2010. Okay. So, and then we have Knell's repertory, which I value a lot when it's about newborn and children, because many references in the complete repertory were taken by Knell, because he had a lot of very valuable clinical observation here. A repertory of Herring's guiding symptoms, so all clinical approved symptoms. That is a name to keep in mind. Okay, so, but if it doesn't matter which case we look at, you might be all familiar how important it is to first see, okay, is it a plant remedy, is it an animal remedy, or is it a mineral remedy? And if we're talking about children, to see what are the main issues about plants for children, and which maybe animal remedies do we see, and also, of course, the minerals. In the mineral kingdom, it might be easy to understand because to highlight this right in the beginning, from my experience, from my clinical experience, observation, and also from literature, history, everything, we find a lot of homeopathic remedies in the second row for children, in the third row for children, and maybe also a few in the fourth row. But as the topics of the second and the third row And of course, we also have the 18 stages, which we will see in a second. We could say the mineral kingdom itself, or the periodic table, where most of the remedies come from, is a bit like a blueprint of life. And it shows us from the top to the bottom also life in its evolution, and also from the left to the right. So it makes a lot of sense that lots of remedies which have carbon inside, we have calcareous carb, we have magnesium carb, natrium carb, etc., that they are, or we have pure carbon like graphites, that they are very often indicated in children. But also all remedies from the third row, which starts with natrium, magnesium, again, silica, yeah, because this is about identity. And when I want to find my identity, it's also like, okay, in the beginning, I'm 50% mother and father, but then I have to see, who am I? Who do I identify with? Yeah, to the process of individualization. And then later on, of course, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth this is also miasmatically when there is a deep organic disturbance from the beginning on. We might see remedies from the lower rows, like row 6, gold, when they have a handicapped child, when there is a serious heart issue. Yeah, then we might see those remedies. But just for the beginning, keep in mind that the second and the third row, we find lots of classical children remedies. Here, just a screenshot to confirm what we were talking about when we're talking about the rows 1 to 7. Now we have second row, we have lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, yeah, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, and neon. But this is the birth process. So it has a big meaning that, for example, on the left side, like the first 3 stages, we see remedies in the second row, which are often indicated for children. For example, boron. Yeah, borax is natrium borachicum, which is a remedy when a birth was too quick, too fast. The child, for some reason, came out too quick, and now it's totally full of fear, afraid of downward motion, of clinging, holding itself, can't be separated, all that. And the answer is already in the periodic table. Yeah, because this is the law of separation, the carbon. Separation and identity. Or if we go even higher, we have hydrogen and helium, which are very much children who are actually not even arrived on Earth. We find autism in helium. We find children which are completely lost in space. They don't make eye contact, they're not connected, they not really arrived. So, and this is important to keep in mind. Or if we go, at least we could say maybe raw 4, we also have a few interesting remedies for children, other than the third raw. I would say they're all important for children: natrium, magnesium, alumina, silica, phosphorus, sulfur, they're all important remedies, chlorum. And a few we also find in the fourth row. Fourth row is the iron, yeah, row, which means boundaries, security, family. And copper, for example, we will see in a minute, copper is a polycrest of the newborn. Yes, because there is a lot of fighting back against something which might have been done to the child by force of the male power. Yeah, so iron and copper are very important in this raw, iron and copper. but we will see that further on in a moment, just to get an idea. Plants. I found something very special in plants. Defined they are, especially in the sensation method, is there is a strong sensitivity and reactivity. And what we can undoubtedly say is, and also we have one sensation and the opposite. We have tightness, whiteness, these polarities. But what we can say definitely is that plants in general are very sensitive, like the children. They are totally exposed. And interesting enough is that many children, when they just born, they need a plant remedy or remedy from the plant kingdom. Or look at all the acute remedies we have in acute disease or a fever in children. What is the first thing coming into your mind? It's mostly a plant remedy. It's belladonna, it's arnica, it's pulsatilla, it's strawberry acrea, etc., etc. So the plants, and this is a part which I like to introduce you to, especially with the plants, because I love plants, and I think the plant kingdom in homeopathy for me is probably the most fascinating kingdom. Of course, we could also say the animal kingdom is very fascinating, but in the plant kingdom, because we have so much we can't see at the first sight, but which is hidden in the plant itself, and we get so many answers. So we want to quickly go through that and find an answer. Why do children tend so easily to a remedy from the plant kingdom? So what happens in acute diseases? And when I talk about acute disease, it can of course be like a fever, but it can also be like acute in a sense of acute depression of breathing, yeah, which we have to assess when children are just born. We have the Apgar, which is based on Virginia Apgar. We will see that in a minute. And we have to look, is the child breathing itself? How are the reflexes? What is the color? Is it red? Is it pale? Is it whatever? You name it. So, and children, for some reason, they tend to the plant kingdom. And I was approaching that and looking, why is it like that? Why are they often indicated during acute diseases in childhood? And then I found one answer, especially the newborn child shows, similar to the plant kingdom, a high sensitivity, of course. The child is completely at the mercy of its environment and needs, in addition to love, especially warmth, light, air, and water for its healthy development and survival. Because a child, I mean, it's so dependent and it needs all this, especially love, warm, light, air, and water, to survive, which a plant also needs. Children have a very fine antenna. Yeah, they are already receptive to disturbances of all kinds of things in the womb, even. If something stressful happens during pregnancy, children have already taken over, and they might even get born with this story. So when something serious happens, we have to address it and see how has it influenced the child. And another answer I found that was also always strong, or is a strong connection with Anne Schade, who is even more into Steiner philosophy. We could say anthroposophy, or we could say Steiner, Rudolf Steiner here, Steiner philosophy. I found an answer, what makes the plant actually poisonous? Because we will see this in a minute, many remedies for children when they have a acute issue right in the beginning are poisonous plants. And the question is why, or what makes actually a plant poisonous? And there was a book from a Swiss doctor And the title is Sanfte Heilpraxis in German, or Swiss, or gentle healing. And he says plants are living antenna for cosmic atmospheric influences. And they, like poison, develops in a plant, says he about plants, when it receives too much soul or astral forces. To make it easy when you're not in this Steiner philosophy, you could say the influence from the cosmos, from the stars, from the planets, whatever, coming down to the plant is that forces, yeah, these forces have coming into the plants for which it cannot be dwelling from its plant existence. So that means these influences coming into the plant have to be released, or they come in and then they have to be released. And how do they get released? In alkaloids. Alkaloids are plant poison. Is a plant poison. Yeah, the excess must be excreted in the form of alkaloids as toxins. And this, what Jurgen Weiland is his name, what he wrote, makes so much sense for me, because if we look at really powerful remedies like belladonna, hyoscyamus, stramonium, what are they all? They are poisonous plants. You can kill someone, especially a child, with it. So poison means as more poison there is in a plant, as more powerful somehow it also can be. Yeah. But the beauty in homeopathy is, we all know that we don't use plants in mother tincture. We potentize it. So, and as more we go away from the substance, as more powerful they get through the dynamization, and we can really change serious conditions. So on the very first one I want to pick out here, which is often, of course, an acute problem, the asphyxia in children, in newborns. Asphyxia means like there's a depression of breathing, they can't really breathe, and for certain different reasons. And if we look at the remedies here, we see some 22 remedies which are mainly indicated, yeah. But some of them are highly poisonous plants, like aconite is from the buttercup family, ranuncula family, highly poisonous, yeah. Or we have, of course, also poisonous minerals like arsenicum album. Yeah, but if we stay in the plant kingdom, we have belladonna, highly poisonous. Camphora is also poisonous. Yeah, we have China, which is not so poisonous, but it can make. It depends on the dosage. Hyoscyamus is inside. Yeah, and so on. So, or Laurel cerasus, which is like a child who can't really breathe. Why? Because of a heart issue. Because this is a keynote, Laurel cerasus, for children with heart defects. Yeah, they have serious heart issues, and because of that, they can't really breathe. So, or ipecacuanha is also poisonous. Yeah, but the beauty is to understand not just that they are poisonous plants, also that they are somehow having a home in their botanical grouping. Like nowadays we say in subclasses, or we understand, which we look now, is this a monocot, is it a dicot, is it a gymnosperm, or is it a moss? Yeah, and we understand now these systems so much better, which we will also come to in a minute. But just as an introduction, if we address newborn children and issues, we find often indicated plants. And just as a reminder, Virginia Apgar, who introduced the Apgar score, which is like it shows like the tonus of the child, the color of the child, the heartbeat, the breathing, etc., etc. And you check it after 1 and 5 minutes. So when I treat children and every time they bring from their pediatrician a yellow sheet, a yellow little booklet, and then the first thing I look at is the APGAR score. And if there is a child where it says there, and years ago it were even 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, so you had 3 numbers in the score. If they say it's 0, 3, 5 or something, or 3 or 0, 3, then you know already without asking a lot, this child had to be resuscitated, yeah, had to be ventilated, or there was a serious emergency topic. And for that, these numbers, the score goes from 0 to 10 because these 5 different scores, they each get 2 points, and the maximum you can have is 10, and the minimum is 0. So that, even the midwives do that, they check it from Virginia APGAR. Like the backronym is appearance, pulse, grimace, activity, respiration, or which you could also read as APGAR, Virginia APGAR. Her name, her surname is coming from these backronyms. Yeah. So, but I won't go too much into detail of that, but just keep in mind when there is a heart issue, you think of loroceralus, or if the child has to be ventilated, which we will see now in the first case sample, there is an issue and maybe a connection to this rubric I've shown and also to the remedies inside. So the first case I like to share with you is, okay, can I just stop that? It's a case of a boy which was 12 weeks old. And I show this case because it's like a typical issue and also an issue where we can learn a lot from about poison and what I was just introducing you. So this boy, we name him Moritz, was 12 weeks old. And his problem was a low heartbeat, bradycardia, and he was a premature birth. And the mother, she had a HELP syndrome. The HELP syndrome, I just explained it on the keynote before, I've just underlined it, is like they get, and typically it's in the 28th week of pregnancy, the women, they get a pain, they feel weak, they feel sore in their liver area. And then sometimes it can go so quickly. You have high elevated liver platelets, you have they tend to bleed. So, I mean, it's really an emergency where they can die quickly, and then the child has to be removed as quick as possible. And that was here also the case in this HELP syndrome. And when she came for treatment, the child was still in inpatient treatment in hospital and had a monitor. Sometimes children come here, parents come here with young babies or children, they even go home with a monitor. And when the child goes home with a monitor, for me, this is already a hint to acute remedies, and often a plant or something where there is you see like ambulance flashing something, oh, it can be danger, yeah? So, but what did the mother say? She said she had this HELP syndrome in the 28th week of her pregnancy. It started with abdominal discomfort, very typical, and elevated liver enzymes. So when that combination comes up at this time, you have to be careful. But at that time, a doctor did not recognize any danger. I mean, this is an old case, but I've digged it out to underline the topic. And by that time, it wasn't so popular, or not everybody knew about it. Now, the midwives, everyone knows exactly, when that happens, you have to do something. Sometimes it's connected also to very high blood pressure. It's a bit like gastosis or eclampsia, the old terms. And then she passed out, she fainted, and she had a cerebral seizure with tongue biting. And there was no problem in her physically before. So she had a pregnancy fine till then. Then she got this HELP syndrome. She fainted, she had this discomfort, and then everything happened very quickly. I was taken to the hospital, got ventilated, and only at noon my son was delivered by cesarean section. So they had to stabilize her first, and then they took the child out. And while the mother was talking about this, she was a bit like detached, or it wasn't really emotional the way she was speaking. Because sometimes, somebody tells you the story and is crying and crying, or is desperate or sighing or whatever, but she was almost detached. And this I notice also a lot when there is a traumatic birth experience. Sometimes the mother is still in a fright situation, in a trauma situation, and doesn't get to her own emotion. Her lasting feeling about the upper abdominal complaints that had existed beforehand, if only someone had taken me seriously, then none of this would have happened. So she felt not taken seriously. And then from week 7, the boy, from week 7 in pregnancy till week 11, she had bleedings, but that happened also in her first pregnancy, and this pregnancy, the first one, ended okay. So I thought this could be a hint, but it wasn't. No nausea, and apart from the upper abdominal discomfort, she felt fine. So when the emergency cesarean was done, the mother's complaint quickly subsided. She was fine after that, physically, but her son's problems were just beginning. He was weighing only 910 grams in week 28. Sometimes I have later on seen children also with 700 or 680 even, so they can survive now with all the intensive care treatment. But of course, it's a journey for the parents. It's traumatic. Yeah. In the first few days, he was completely ventilated, and afterwards only with support. From the beginning, there were these bradycardias, which still occur several times a day. And what happens then? He turns blue. He becomes apathetic, and the monitor then triggers an alarm. So far, it's enough to pinch him briefly or on his cheeks, or no, so that he regains consciousness. A complication that occurred in the 6th week of life, his life, early life, was a massive swelling of the extremities, but his face particularly was affected. He looked like a clown's face. It was so swollen, like a clown's face, very bloated, deep red. And the examination of, when I looked at the child, there was not really anything else to get out. He was relatively pale, drank his bottle regularly. Nothing, the stool was fine or sweating, because this is what we look at newborn babies. We look, how is the stool? Are they constipated? Is there diarrhea? Is the stool sour or anything like that? Do they sweat or are they dry? But here only a little bit like bluish fingernails, but the feet were warm. And on top of it, there was a bilateral inguinal hernia. So on both sides. He had a hernia in the groins. The parents should not think of discharging him from the hospital until he's stable and the bradycardia is absent. So the mother came first to the interview to my office, and then I went out to visit him in the hospital. And it was a sweet little baby, but from observation, I could not get anything else out except what the mother already was talking about. So, and when I combined some rubrics here of the child and the mother, so because, I mean, of course, this is a mother-child unit, sometimes it's allowed to just take the mother's symptom combined with the child, because we had these convulsions during pregnancy. And we have the slow pulse, which is a strong symptom, plus the hernia. So nothing really else we could use. And if we look at the totality of the remedies, we could say, okay, there are lots till tarantula here going through from the list, from the totality of symptoms. So the remedy, and that's why this is a confirmation of this topic about plants and also poisonous plants. Because interesting is when we look at the plants here in green, now we could say, okay, we also have three animals, tarantula, lachesis, a snake, and we have a bee. But we would expect something restless in a bee, something hot. The same with lachesis. Lachesis is an interesting, the snake remedy is interesting. Also Crotalus, the North American rattlesnake. If we have issues about rhesus incompatibility, so we have blood issues, there's blood destruction, or we have bleeding, there's syphilitic conditions, hemorrhagia, all that, but that was not the case at all. So, and as I said in the introduction, also we have some interesting remedies from the third row, magnesium, carb, second and third row, magnesium chloride, second and third row, exactly that, what I was introducing you to. Zinc-Hom is also a mineral, but now let's look at the plants, because I gave a plant here. And what is so poisonous and what is so well known, of course, is belladonna. But for belladonna, we would also expect something very different. Same with stramonium, yeah. But if we think about what happens in the child, is we have a fright situation like that. We have a premature birth and this sudden death threatening situation. And the reaction is, I go to sleep. Very easy. I just go to sleep. And if we look at the genius of those remedies running through these rubrics, and when we look at those remedies which go to sleep, I would say mainly where there are only two, and this is opium and Helleborus. And interesting enough is that both remedies belong to the same order of plants, or to the same subclass, which is the first subclass in homeopathy. Helleborus is a ranuncular family, but it's the order of ranunculales, where under the magnoli there, we look at that later. And the same remedy is opium. Yeah, opium is a poppy in the Papaveraceae family, but the order is ranunculalis. And this, you might have guessed it already, I have given. So the prescription in this small first case was opium, the poppy, yeah. And the Latin name even is Papaver somniferum. That means the carrier, the holder of sleep. Yeah. So there is something so terrible happening that the only way to cope it is to go to sleep, to be numb, to be anesthesia. Yeah, it's like it's so threatening from the outside, and then I just go to sleep. And this is a very specific topic for all the remedies actually in the first subclass, or in these orders. Alles is always a group of remedy, and Arcea is always a specific family. So that's the order, and that's a family. Okay, so what happened, or if we just look at Hering's guiding symptoms, we see there's a lot of stupor, spasm, but also we have heavy, stupid sleep, stupid, with a red face in opium. That's what Hering's guiding symptoms say about opium if there is a acute hydrocephalus. Yeah. But stupid even after waking. Child seems to be afraid of something and starts as if frightened. Either that side, or mostly it's sleeping. It goes to sleep. Yeah, it's like completely numb. Yeah, and that is so important. And this is what I introduced you to, that the opium is also one of these poisonous plants. It looks beautiful in the flower, the poppy, but it somehow by nature gets too much poison, and the poison is released by alkaloids. And those alkaloids are so important. Yeah. Let me go one step back here and go back to our main. Yeah, we can actually add another short case to this, where it goes even a little bit more deep, where we can read now with the glasses of a poppy or opium, because that was the boy I gave the same remedy, opium. But now let's read and see where are the similarities. What happened here? He's 21 days old. So constipation in children, which is a rubric here from the complete 19, but that is the German version, but you see it's German and English. So constipation in children. Alumina, second row, no? Apis again, but of course also opium, yeah, which is so important in this. And opium, the history of opium in this rubric for me is that many decades ago, people, or in midwifery, they gave even painkiller. Yeah, they gave even opiate to release the pain during birth. Yeah, and that's why it's so important to have this family and this remedy in this rubric. So, but what was the story? Spontaneously, Paul had no digestion yet. In the clinic, they made pressure because of his because they wanted to give him something else than the breast, supplementary feeding, because they thought he's not getting enough. He's a very delicate child and does not gain weight easily. So that's also the feeling you get when a child needs a puppy, that they haven't really arrived. These are all the plants which are in a very early stage. They're overwhelmed. Yeah. This is probably also due to his drinking behavior because, and this is typical opium, after a short suck, he falls right back to sleep. If a mother says about her baby, "Oh, my baby is fantastic," after a few days, it slept through the night. Yeah, this is impossible. This is alarm. Yeah, because children need to cry, they need to make a hell of a noise to wake up the mother, and also this crying helps to release oxytocin, and then the milk flows and everything. So this is important. When they need to be fed, they need to cry. But this child didn't really cry. Yeah. He has foul-smelling gas like rotten eggs, typical also for opium. He twitches very frequently, both when he's sleeping and when he's awake. I have the feeling in the opposite to my first son at this age that he's not, and this is a typical sentence for opium or that whole clade, not really arrived yet. It's somehow absent. Yeah, this is typical for opium. So what happened? Giving birth was actually very fast, 4 hours, second child. But in the middle of labor, in the dilatating opening phase, I suddenly, and this is important, suddenly got very scared, afraid I might get an embolism because she had a thrombosis in pregnancy, and now while she was in labor, she suddenly got this feeling of, oh my God, I should not press too hard, I should not overexert myself because it might happen something to my brain or whatever. And then she said, at that moment, I had a birth arrest. Nothing went on. This is so typical also. Nothing went on. The case before is the heart somehow stops beating, or the birth is arrested, or nothing goes on. This is so important. Everybody around became very hectic, and I came to the contraceptive drip. So they put her on a drip, and they induced, because we have to speed up now, because there's a still stand in your birth progress. I had the feeling of being torn off, totally stuck. So she was somehow gone. So now the child, hardly any sweat, nothing else really obvious, rather pale, small, and sickle feet, which is not rare. When they have sickle feet, means the feet they look inside, yeah, instead of like sulfur has feet which go too early outside. They open to the world very quick. These poppies they look inside, yeah. So ailments from fright, constipation in children, offensive farts, flatus, and twitching during sleep. These were the symptoms I had. And when we look at the repertory, we see again that, of course, up to sternum, there are lots of remedies going through. But if you go into the depth of each remedy, you will see from all those up to the totality of sternum, the main remedy again is opium. Yeah, because this is the sleep, the non-reacting. Yeah. So, and that is what I gave. And now I like to show you the first time, and maybe you can later, when you ask me questions or if you write it in the chat, is this question mark totally new for you, or are you familiar with this chart? What is your feeling, Barbara? Is this when in school, or because this chart is taken from Rajan Sankaran, from the sensation method, and it makes so much sense because these sensations, or if we look at what we just gave, we gave opium, yeah, and opium, according to the 6 subclasses in the taxonomy of Arthur Cronquist, he has used the taxonomy of subclasses of the dicots. So we won't find tuya, or we won't find a lily or an orchid in this table because they belong to other families. Yeah. Except now in this superclasses, they also get embedded, but by nature, in the beginning of the subclasses, we have these big clade of Magnoliidae. Means it's a bit like magnolia-like. And the main remedy Rajan was working out, Sankaran, is that opium is the most important representative. And if you look at the themes, we see, raw, sore, exposed, exactly what I was introducing you to with these poisonous plants. That could also mean this could be aconite, same story, raw, sore, exposed, but aconite is more frantic, is more panicking, is pretending, or is predicting its death moment or things like that. Yeah, but opium is really totally in his own world, totally withdrawn, totally numb. And that's why botanically so closely related is Helleborus, yeah, is also in the same plant family. And I mean, when I first saw this, it took me a while, of course, to understand this. But if you get the hang of it, it's so helpful, because then you understand, oh, it must be a remedy from this subclass. Yeah. And what he did later on is to also define the same equivalent in the animal kingdom. So we could say a bivalve means the bivalve are like an oyster, the mollusks. Yeah, you find them here, and they have the same. When there is danger, they go inside. They stay asleep. They are hidden. That's why there's a similarity. And the same with the minerals in the second row, which I introduced you before, the lithium, beryllium, boron on the left side. Because what do? They try to cling to the mother and not come out, because I can't be separated. It's too dangerous, or I stay safe. So this is so helpful, and for babies, for newborn babies in emergency, in these situations, you find a lot opium-like remedies, which could be Helleborus, aconite, but sometimes even a magnolia itself, which would be Nux moschata or Aristolochia. Yeah, there are certain plants which have a strong connection to this topic. And of course, if we would look at all of them, but this will go far too beyond our purpose today, we would understand so much about each class, each subclass, and also see why the spiders, which are restless, the insects, but also sepia, the cephalopods, they try to escape, but quick, yeah? Why they have similarity to a plant like Rustox Psychodendron. Yeah. So this system makes so much sense, and this is just an idea for today. Why? And this, when we make it short, we could say many plants from the first subclass and the the sixth subclass, we find in the indication for children. Because when pain, when trauma, when birth happens, you either react by completely shutting down, or you fight and flight, or you escape. Yeah. So, because paralyzation can also be here, like Gelsemium, sixth subclass, Loganacea, or it can also be here, withdrawn numb with opium. So, but this is only just an appetizer for this system. And of course, I gave a remedy from this class for that boy. And what happened after the remedy? Straight after the remedy, Paul had his first spontaneous stool. So that is amazing. I mean, you give the remedy, and the same day or the night, he pooed without anything else. After that, every 3 to 4 days, always spontaneously, and the foul-smelling winds disappeared, and he became much more alert and present. And the mother said, he really arrived. This is so beautiful. He arrived. Yeah. Because the beauty of endorphins is one gynecologist and also a homeopathic doctor who's so experienced with children. He said, if the woman wouldn't release endorphins during birth, she would never give birth again, because they help to forget. They help to be carried away from the pain, yeah, in a positive way. But if you would always remember the pain of a birth, you would say, come on, guy, do it yourself here. I'm not in the game anymore. Yeah? It was so painful. Yeah. So they have a beautiful side, but if you stay in the low and depression, of course, you don't come out of it. So, and just to give you a small insight, because I told you I also like photography, and I learned so much from just approaching these remedies with my camera. So we have more remedies in this family. Like this one, for example, is Escholzia, is a Californian poppy. Yeah. And the Californian poppy, when it comes to flower, you might see this. Oops. It's a bit like a sleeping hat. So that's also a German word, Schlafmützchen. How would you translate that, Barbara? Schlafmützchen, a sleeping cap or something.
Schlafmütze. Oh, sleeping hat. Well, we don't
Yes.
have that, but infants often have these little bitty hats that they wear in the
Yes.
beginning.
Yeah. So the Californian poppy could be indicated as a remedy from the same family. And also, you might have seen this is a very strong remedy for lung conditions in children, which is because the whole family of the poppies, they have a milk fluid. And the opium has a white fluid where you make also heroin from. And sanguinaria, which is a lung remedy, has this red fluid. And in the botanical garden here in Bonn, the gardener, she said, come, I show you this poppy, which is white flowering, but her leaves, when you cut through them, the Sanguinaria canadensis, it looks like blood is oozing out. Yeah? So no one cut his finger here. This is just coming from the plant. And the same as with the yellow color, when you have a early jaundice in children, you might think of chelidonium, which is a yellow color, yellow for liver, yellow for bilirubin. Yeah. So, and very sleepy. And you know, when you have a cancer stage in elderly people, they fall asleep. They completely yellow because the brain is flooded by these by the poison from the liver. Yeah, and then they get so sleepy, and then you can think of a poppy. Yeah, so this I wanted to share with you, and then let's carry on with one more case in our main. You see, Barbara, the challenge is to not go over time, but I try to keep in time. So other than the asphyxia or these very strong poisonous plants we have, for all sorts of heart issues and things like that, the colics are an issue in children. Typically 3 months colics, 12 weeks, where the one sign would be, and that's why I just gave some general information here, it's like a regulatory disorder, or sometimes you don't know, is a shrieking child, has it issues with digestion? You can never separate it. But as we know, the brain and the gut, sometimes trauma is expressed by bellyache in children, or when they have anxiety, all that. So the same with that is like here we have certain remedies like chamomile, of course, colocynthis, which are often indicated in children. But if we don't have a good story to it, if we don't have a obvious story to it, it's going to be difficult to differentiate. But as I said in the introduction from the minerals, you also have borax again here, borax. Why are these people having colics, these children, borax? Because they are suffering from coming into life too quick. The separation went too quickly and they are still not ready for it. So they're clinging. They might have a fungus on their tongue, like a candida infection. Then you think of borax. Yeah. But I want to share a case with you, and this is just here general information of twins. So, and we can hear a little bit what the mother was talking about, because she said both boys have severe colics. We could only get pregnant. Yeah. So there's point, full stop. They have colics. Getting pregnant was difficult. It only went worst possible as artificial insemination. We wanted the children so much, and she was like the mother. We will hear her a few seconds. She was as a mother very much like doing it right, and really wanting these children. Yeah. But also she had a HELP syndrome, but not so early. It was week 35. Also, her platelets had dropped massively, and then an emergency cesarean was performed on the same day. Like the opium experience here, we had an emergency cesarean, but she said this was a big shock, and she starts crying for all of us. Within 2 hours, the baby were then delivered. I had a massive loss of blood. I didn't see the children on the first day. I lost a lot of blood, and I always pumped my milk to breastfeed. One of the children had breathing problems and had to stay in hospital even longer. The parents were there, but then there was also conflict with the parents and with the father. So lots of trouble, lots of issues, and everything was so well expected and planned, but life went completely different. In the intensive care unit, I was given blood preservations, and my eyesight has deteriorated a lot since then. So she had lots of consequences also from giving birth. To this day, I still have a piece. Bill, there's someone wanting to come in. I just let her in. Okay. To this day, I still have a piece of the placenta in my uterus. So 4 weeks, and they say they still want to remove it, but I hope it will remove by itself, placenta retention. Yeah. And then I of course asked, how are the children? And she said, one boy, he's more agile, and when he cries, he's very loud, he screams a lot, but they both wake up and scream. We rush home then. Yeah. He can't be calmed with a dummy, and he wakes up and screams, and he's then really in a panic. So it's panic, it's rushing home, not knowing what to do. And when he's in a good mood, everything is fine. So he accompanied every movement with a strong noise. So she's really overwhelmed and she doesn't know what to do. So, and then I took the interview, and I want to just translate you a few lines from
Das
here.
muss ganz schnell gehen. Was ist das für ein Gefühl, was die vermitteln, wenn die in so eine Not...
So I'm just asking here, what is the feeling they giving you, your children, when they cry? Yeah.
Not kommen? Wie würden Sie das beschreiben?
Ja, vielleicht irgendwie so Überlebensangst, ne? Also
She said it's like survival, anxiety of surviving.
wachen auf und fühlen sich vielleicht irgendwie unwohl, unsicher. Vielleicht fehlt denen einfach diese Sicherheit
Maybe
und
security is
Geborgenheit.
missing.
Und
Maybe they don't
ich
feel
weiß nicht, ob die das
cozy.
ein Gefühl haben, dass sie dann so Alleinkämpfer sind und sich dann irgendwie
They're fighting
bemerkbar
alone,
machen müssen, anscheinend. Also
fighting for
so ein Unwohl, also
survival.
die schlafen bei uns im Zimmer.
Ja.
Und wir haben das so schön eingerichtet, so mit Liebe auch eingerichtet und wir haben die auch mit Liebe erwartet.
So we have done everything with love. We have made it so cozy at home.
Und ja,
Wie ein Schreck, wie ein Schock. Und das ist natürlich auch nochmal die Frage, wie war das für Sie? Sie
So
hatten
how did you experience this? You said it was like a fright for the children, but also for you. How did you experience it?
sozusagen bis zur 35. Woche eine ganz normale Schwangerschaft. Dann hatten Sie auf einmal diese Diagnose.
So it was fine
Was ging
till
dann
week
los in
35,
Ihnen?
and then you got this
Was kann ich mich
situation.
auch noch erinnern?
ja, mir kommen schon die Tränen.
So now she
Ja,
starts crying.
also Enttäuschung,
Disappointment,
Schock und Angst.
shock,
Ja,
anxiety.
Enttäuschung, weil ich mir das nicht so vorgestellt hatte.
Disappointed because I expected something so different.
Ähm, und dass ich es nicht geschafft habe, dass es mit den Thrombozyten doch irgendwie hochgeht.
So I failed, I didn't make it, and so on. So that should be enough for the moment. I just give you a few more information here. So when the child wakes up, he gets angry, bangs his head, has real fits. He's impatient, the one of them. The children are hungry and then scream when they wake up. They both twitch, then they are so extremely jumpy at noises, so they get afraid when there's a noise. Stool is extremely smelly. The color was yellow. Also from sleep, he suddenly wakes up, contracts completely, also with his legs. He's always physically tense. By the way, the children react from their acute alertness. We could also think of stramonium, yeah, easily, fright, and then it's almost like survival situation, yeah. But then when we combine it also with the mother, no, she says there, disappointment, shock, fear, I didn't make it. Yeah. I had no more control over my body. I tried homeopathy with arnica colucintis for the children, but nothing really helped. I can't look at the scar until today from the cesarean. She said she can't even look at her own body, which is also for me a feeling of trauma hasn't been digested, it's not released. It didn't turn out the way I imagined. I have also become very jumpy since then. I just feel very helpless. I was just very surprised with it. Everything was a mess. We weren't prepared at all. So that was what I got out of this case, the two boys. And then, of course, you think, what shall we do? Shall we give a remedy for the children like stramonium, or how can we bring it together? So ailments from shock, from fright, hypersensitive to noise, frightened by noise. But also the mother has a problem. There's still something clinging to the parts of the placenta are not released. So placenta retention and the colics in children or babies. So, and if we do a general repertorization, we have these 5 rubrics, which I just mentioned. And then again, we could say we have up to, it goes a bit longer here if we would look in the repertory itself. But what's running through is belladonna, cygnacea, and then chamomile, nux vomica as plants. And so interesting is that the winner in points are 4 remedies from the same subclass, which is the daisies or the asteridae. And as I was just mentioning about stramonium could be going into that box as well. So it looks like stramonium in the children, or here's even coffea. And now with the new software, we can also limit and say, okay, I have a feeling it could be something from the 6th subclass, especially because those plants all belong to it. And then I can limit it even, and I can say, okay, show the results just from the 6th subclass, the Asteridae. And then you see here only plants which belong to that clade: belladonna, ignatia, chamomile, nux vomica, stramonium, coffea, arnica, gelsemium, hyoscyamus, ipecacuanha, etc. Different plant families, but they all have an issue of fight and flight and shock and trauma. Bleeding is also what lots of daisies have, yeah, hemorrhagia. So, and what I gave, and which is fitting so well from many, many things, is ignatia, because ignatia has also that kind of fright of violence. And here you see again the fight and flight, the Asteridae, where it looks a bit like stramonium, but if we go into the details, we see, no, it's not a nightshade, it's a Loganaceae. And Loganaceae is cramping, is colics, is pain, and also disappointment, of course. It comes exactly to the opposite what you were hoping for. So in this case, I gave ignatia, and here again contains the cramp poison alkaloid strychnine. So it's even worse when you take the pure alkaloid. In many plant families, we have then strychninum. In the poppies, we would have morphinum. Yeah, but in the Loganaceae family, where ignatia belongs to, lots of remedies have an indication by a sudden loss of a child or sudden fear to lose their children. Gelsemium, nux vomica, ipecacuanha, ignatia. Complaints due to shock, anger, disappointment, silent grief. Miasm is cancer. Cancer means must maintain control during shock, grief. So to really do the best to manage it, but she was completely overwhelmed. And I just treated her with ignatia, plus, because she didn't breastfeed anymore, or it was difficult, I also gave it to the children, yeah, for a while, till the children got very quickly quieter. She could handle it better. Also, the mother could release her own trauma. But later on, like nowadays, they have a fever or something and we treat that, but then it's not ignatia anymore. So it's just for that, to get rid, to release this early phase of trauma. Because when that is released, the trauma, when we have taken that away, then there's maybe time to get into your constitution, or to get to your phase where you could say, now I'm curious who is actually coming here and what is she developing, or his own individuality. But if the trauma is still triggered, then you have just panic and overreacting, and that needs to be addressed first. And for that, for me, the mother-child unit is so important. Yeah. So in pregnancy or during birth, for ignatia, there is a rigidity, like we have in Gelsemium and nux vomica. There is sighing, there are hemorrhoids, which has nux vomica as well after birth. And the lochia are mostly suppressed by emotions, so they can get really sick, ignatia. Infant colic after nursing at the breast of a fretting mother. Fretting, or I don't know if that's a good translation, someone who's really worried about everything too much. Yeah. Okay. So the time is actually really running, amazing, but I hope, because I have, of course, I could go further with cases, but what my core message should be for today is like, try to look at the mother-child unit and also to see what is the connection and um, and also to see, okay, the poisonous plants and everything, they come into the game very often. But now, before you ask some question, let me show you one thing, which is a little movie, and that film I made with the midwives when they were doing their aftercare and things like that for the babies. And yeah, this is my final little piece of art which I like to share, also the music, and hopefully I have to just get that quickly because these babies are just beautiful. And now the midwives I'm working with here, mother I'm allowed to touch the baby as well. So yeah, that was what I could share in getting some red cheeks in a good hour. Do you have any questions? There's
Jurgen,
something.
Jenny had a question. Please say more about women forgetting the pain of birth and having to release something that sounded like endophytes.
Endorphins.
Endorphins, yeah.
Yes.
Endorphins, it's like the positive side of these endorphins. It's like when you go for a marathon running, you, after a certain time of running, you get really terrible pain in your legs, yeah, and you feel like, oh, I give up, yeah. But then when you carry on a bit, then you suddenly release endorphins, and they make you feel like euphoric, and you feel like also, oh, I don't have any pain anymore. I can run. So that is the positive aspect. But of course, if it's too much, if it's an overhang, and you stay just in the painlessness, yeah, because that would be a rubric also if we go to the repertory, painlessness of usually painful complaints, then we would see the poppies again. And this is sometimes it's good to feel pain, because then you also know when it's time to finish. You cannot run and run and run and run and run when your body is actually done on your heart, and maybe you will die. I don't know. Okay. Jenny, you say thank you. You understood. Great. Fantastic. Okay, do you give the remedies? Do you give the remedies to the babies or to mothers if they breastfeed, to treat the mother-child unit? I prefer to give it just to the mother when they breastfeed, because this is also what Hahnemann wrote in Aphorism. I think it was 284 or something, the application to a child during pregnancy, but also via the nurse, which was Hahnemann's time. Usually nowadays it's only the mother who breastfeeds, but he gave praises to that because it's like an antipsoric treatment. But for me, to make it short, the mother first, and then later on, maybe when the child is older, half a year, and still breastfeeding, sometimes I give it mother and child, But then to be sure, when they're older, I also give it to the child. One reason I love homeopathy so much is also lab results. Tests can be helpful. They are not necessary because we treat symptoms. You observed and found best remedies. Yeah, thank you, with good results. Thank you, Tracy. Recording will be available, I guess. At what point might you consider a metridonal remedy? This is another question I could go much longer for, because I have, of course, experience. Let's say, for example, and I think we showed these cases in our seminar in Colorado once, like amniotic fluid is a fantastic remedy for premature birth when you lose the shell too early, yeah, and when you're born and have like serious issues with neurodermatitis, eczema, and like I had one child with a huge cradle cap, like terrible, and the powerful remedy for it was amniotic fluid. So that's an important one. Or number one, for children who are so upset, like stramonium-like, but it doesn't help the stramonium, then my second choice is oxytocinum. Yeah, for traumatic birth experience, yeah, oxytocinum is a fantastic remedy. Amniotic fluid, lac humanum, of course, when there's a issue with belonging to the group, the family, separation issues, things like that. But that could be a complete seminar weekend just to differentiate the maternal or matridonal remedies. Good. So one more question here. Thank you. Yeah. Was there another question? No. If there is no other real question, I would like to, because there are still some people around here, and I would like to play 1 minute or two on my handpan, because when I'm doing homeopathy, it's one thing, but sometimes I need to do something else. And you might have not seen this instrument. It's coming from Switzerland. It was designed in Switzerland, but now it's produced worldwide, and this one is coming from Italy. It's a so-called handpan, and it's also like a sound healing instrument. And yeah,
Jürgen,
yes,
before you start, let
yeah,
me say thank you first. And
yeah,
also, this will be available on our website.
yeah,
So
sure.
you may wait a week or so, and then you can go to our website, free webinars, and then you can see this on there.
Good. Okay, so
Do babies like this?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes, you know, when some people talk about really traumatic experiences or something, I just think start playing the handpan. So other than listening. Okay, so wonderful to see you all, and I'm looking on my right side because then I can see you better here. Wishing you a wonderful time, a lovely day, and I have to go to bed soon here. No, not yet, but we are having already evening dinner time. Thanks for listening, and yeah, maybe we meet again. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
All the best.
Nice to have you again. Bye-bye. Bye-bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.